Damn, Cramsey's gonna lose his blues card. People are gonna be upset because he's always nominating blues artists and everything, but they're gonna turn on him after this one, I think.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason, Joe, and Crams are here. After a week off, we are back with another listography, and we're coming back with some blues. We haven't done a blues artist really at all on the channel, not a pure blues artist. We've got some Stevie Ray Vaughan this week. So we are ranking 6 albums. We're bending our own rules a little bit and including Family Style, which is a collaboration album. And we are including The Sky is Crying, which was the compilation that came out after he passed away. So 6 in all. We just kind of did that to beef up the amount of albums a little bit. I thought this was a breath of fresh air after all of the Cramtober artists, all the 80s stuff. This is still mostly 80s, but felt very, very different.
Yeah, it was nice actually to just get like some guitar forward stuff. I don't remember the last time we really like highlighted the guitar as an instrument with a discography. So pretty cool. Maybe back when we did T-Rex or something. I don't even know.
It's been far too long since we had a guitarist of Stevie Ray's stature to talk about. So it was definitely nice to have him and a different 80, like this is the 80s, as Jason said, but it's like so far removed from what we've been listening to. It's like from, another planet, a nice breezy listen, only 6 albums. So it was good. It was a good change up, refreshing palate cleanser.
So as far as familiarity, I went through a bit of a Stevie Ray Vaughan phase when I first started playing guitar in like my early high school years, 9th, 10th grade. Listened to him a lot then. I had heard all of these before, at least once or twice each. Owned a few of them on CD, had Texas Flood on vinyl, but haven't listened to him much at all since then. So this was kind of like a nostalgia trip a little bit, hearing some of these records again. How much did you guys know?
I know I've listened to probably all of them, but the ones I've heard the most are Soul to Soul and Family Style because we had them on CD. I remember those, like my dad loved Stevie Ray Vaughan, so we listened to those a lot. But really, I have not been deep into his catalog. I've got like a little playlist that I go to of like my 10, 15 favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan songs, and it's kind of like I feel like all you need, to be honest. So not to give too much away, but don't think album listens are really his forte. Let's see.
I grew up listening to the greatest hits just a lot. And I've heard Texas Flood, Couldn't Stand the Weather, and In Step. I never did listen to Soul for some reason. I don't know why. I always just forgot about it. But I mean, it's been a while for some of these, and I don't know. I just kind of fell off. If you look back at like my top 500 songs from when I was 14, 15 years old, there'd be every song from the greatest hits would be on there. And then I really haven't thought about him much in the past couple of years. Nice to get back in step with Stevie.
All right, who's kicking it off? Shall I? Number 6 for me is Family Style. They're working with Nile Rodgers, which, he was the producer on Let's Dance, so it's not the first time they'd worked together. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't think this record highlights Stevie Ray Vaughan's strongest attributes enough. I think there's a lot more of a pop approach on this record with Nile producing the songs and the production. Not enough grit, not enough blues. I think, you get Jimmie Vaughan singing some of the songs. He's not half the singer that Stevie is. So the tracks that he sings are just like immediately half as good as they could be. There's definitely bright spots that save this from being like a 2.5. TikTok, I think, is really good. I love Stevie's soft vocal delivery on that one. Telephone Song, I think, is the kind of bluesy rock tune that I wish the album had more of. And Hillbillies from Outer Space, I think, is really fun, just kind of weird and endearing. And I like the opening track too, kind of poppy, kind of catchy, but, I think it's a fun way to open the record. But other than those moments, I think a lot of it is just kind of like blues by numbers with like weird production choices that don't quite suit the blues and show off their playing as well as it could. So It's a 3-star record, I think. It's not terrible by any means, but I think it could have been a lot better.
I have Family Style at number 6, and I do think it's a terrible record. I'm going 1.5. I do not like this album at all. I think Hard to Be is really lame. This album is way too soft for the blues. There's not enough guitar. Also, like, I'm trying to think of a discography we've done where someone was nearly as bad as Jimmy is on vocals. He is just terrible. It is so elementary, and it really just feels like, let me let my brother do this, just because, if he was not his brother, there's no way he would be singing in a studio for money. Like, it's really embarrassing to me, to be honest. Everything's really cheesy sounding. I think the bass is really fat and bright. It doesn't fit. White Boots is just awful. Like, a lot of these are like just kind of like goofy sounding to me. I don't know what it is. I think DFW is kind of a cool, well-written song, but it's just so weak on this album. Like, if just let Stevie do it on a different album, it would have been cool. Everything just kind of sounds like it's like from an 80s bad tough guy movie soundtrack. Like, it should be scoring like Roadhouse or something like that, or like an episode of like Walker, Texas Ranger or something. It's just really weak. Good Texan is incredibly lame. Like, this stuff would barely sound hard in the 50s to me. Like, it's just so lame. Long Way Home, probably the best song in the album for me, other than Telephone Song, and I love Telephone Song. I actually nominated it for Song of the Year when it came out. I think TikTok is super lame. I don't know what you're talking about, Jason. And then Baboom Mama Said, just atrocious. I think this is embarrassing for Stevie's catalog. 1.5, I think it's very bad.
Well, I see where both of you are coming from. I'm in the middle. I think it's pretty, it's not necessary at all. If we weren't bending the rules, it wouldn't even be in Stevie Ray's catalog. It's something nice he did with his brother. I think the songs that Stevie Ray Vaughan writes and sings on are all pretty darn good. I don't think I would change anything about Hard to Be or Long Way From Home or Telephone Song. But I don't like Jimmie Vaughan as a singer. I'm kind of with Cramser on that. I just don't think he has the grit. He doesn't bring anything to the table. I think the production from Nile Rodgers on this album is really bad. Totally just misdiagnoses what is needed from him on this album. The bass is terrible. It sounds like plastic and cheesy. And, Good Texan, the lyrics are too stilted. Same with TikTok. White Boots, that's a cover, so you can't blame Jimmy for that. But it's pretty unnecessary. Like, it just doesn't need to exist. It was a nice thing for Stevie Ray Vaughan to do with Jimmy, his brother, and that's about it. I have it at 2.5 stars because, anything with Stevie Ray Vaughan's going to be decent, but like he doesn't get to show off. Like, give me some sick licks or some or screaming guitar solo, something to elevate it above just sort of like middle of the road, barroom blues. I need something a little more, especially after listening to all the other albums. It's like, well, this is a pretty big come down from friggin', In Step and all the ridiculous stuff he was doing. So it was tough. This one was not a great listen. So 2.5 stars.
Trifecta at the bottom. My number 5 is Soul to Soul. I've got this at 3 stars as well. They add Reese Winan on keys for this one, and I'm kind of torn on that move. I do think he's a very good key player, a good piano player, a good organist, but the sounds he uses during his tenure in the band kind of stink. I think they stink more on In Step than they do on this record. But, he fills out the band's sound and makes it more full, but I don't know that it's like necessarily in a desirable way. I think by having the keys in there, you lose some of the space between the notes, you lose some of the room sound, and you lose some of the vibe. And I think when it was just a little more pared back, you could hear a lot more of what was happening in the rhythm section, and you could hear a lot more nuance in Stevie's playing. On top of that, I think this is when the drug and alcohol problems for Stevie and for Tommy Shannon, the bass player, were at their worst. They were going pretty hard at this point, it sounds like. There was some infighting, and just it wasn't a great atmosphere all around. I think it comes through a little bit on the record. And also, I think Stevie's guitar tone on this record is probably the worst that it is on any of the like actual 4 studio records. I think it's a little beefier. He's pictured on the album cover with a 335, and I don't know if he plays it at all. I was looking for info on like the kind of gear and stuff he used on this record, and I couldn't confirm if he was playing other guitars than his usual Strat, but I feel like there's like a little less bite in his tone on this record. It's a little beefier, a little warmer. It still sounds like him playing. It still sounds good overall, but it's just not quite piercing through the way it does on the earlier records. All that said, I think there are still some good songs. Look at Little Sister's pretty cool, but there's also like a bunch of songs on here that feel like they're going through the motions a little bit. Empty Arms, I think, is pretty sluggish, especially if you compare it to other versions. There's a version on This Guy Is Crying that's a lot better. There's a version on the bonus tracks of the expanded edition of Couldn't Stand the Weather that's a lot better than the one that made the record here. So yeah, this one's just easily the worst of those versions. Ain't Gonna Give Up on Love is pretty generic blues in terms of the songwriting. Gone Home, I think, does that jazzy blues thing that he does pretty often, 1 or 2 of those on every record. The other versions of it before it are better. This one's a little less interesting, and I think the rhythm section actually sounds a little bored on it. I think the record closes pretty well with Come On, which has a lot of energy, and then you get the great ballad at the end, Life Without You, so I think it does close with some of the stronger tunes on the record. So yeah, just a 3-star record. It's decent, but it's a good step down from the 2 before it, I think.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way. That was almost my number 5, but I've got it at number 4. My number 5 is The Sky Is Crying, and I've got it at 2.5. My main problem is this album just does not move well. Like, it's just thrown together as a collection rather than like an artistic statement, which makes sense. It's a posthumous album. Boot Hill is okay. I like some of the slide work. The Sky Is Crying, the song, I've like never really been that crazy for other than the soloing. But yeah, Jason's right. The version of Empty Arms on here is really nicely done. I do kind of like that it's like a really good cast of like his styles, like Chicago blues, Delta blues, a little bit of that jazz, like bar rock kind of in there. So Excited is great, actually. I do like that song a good bit. Terrific solo. I also really dig Chitlins Con Carne. But yeah, I just feel kind of lost listening to it. Like throwing some of these songs into a Stevie Ray Vaughan set list is cool. That's just kind of my problem with blues in general. Like I love the blues. I love going to blues show. I prefer blues live to albums. But like, doing it this week, 6 albums in a row, listening to them, you start to hear just the same stuff over and over and over again. And that's just kind of the nature of what it is. And it's just a lot to take. So it's hard for me to really like a blues album start to finish, like fall in love with it, because it's just kind of more the same. And I kind of feel the same with a lot of the old country stuff that you guys like. It just doesn't really wow me with like, creativity, which is big for me usually. So I'm just at 2.5 for The Sky Is Crying, but it's decent. Number 5.
Well, I'm with Jason. I have Soul to Soul as my number 5. And I pretty much agree with everything he says, but I don't agree about Reese Winans. I like the keyboards. I like the organ sounds. I like the stuff he brings. It fills out the sound. I think it's needed. You obviously you don't need that on Texas Flood or Couldn't Stand the Weather, but that sort of style I think could reach to a point where you want to add something to the mix. You want to freshen it up a little bit. I think Reese does that pretty well. And this album, I think it's basically a tale of 2 halves, because the first half, side A, is just okay. It's a lot of sort of rote blues of different varieties, and it sounds okay. I think the production is worse though than his previous 2 albums. I agree with Jason. The tone isn't quite as good for whatever reason. It's just not quite as like gripping, and he's not doing as much either. It seems a little more ordinary a lot. And maybe that's the drugs and everything kicking in, and they're just sort of going through the motions a little bit. But I think there's some good stuff, especially on side B. Change It, I think, is a really great song. I love that shimmering organ. And Stevie's voice, which maybe takes a step back a little bit on this album. I think he was really finding himself and couldn't stand the weather. Change It, though, he's got it. Like, he's got the whole package there. Really dynamite vocal. You can feel the hurt in every syllable. And then You'll Be Mine, I think, is good. Empty Arms, pretty decent. Come On. These are good blues tracks. There's nothing spectacular about them. But they're what you want from Stevie Ray Vaughan. Excellent playing, of course. And closes out with Life Without You, which is fantastic. I love the way it kind of revs up and is, big, giant, like just ball of energy at the end. And he's just ripping off these ridiculous riffs and solos and everything as it sort of like it collapses around you, which is cool. But I think as an album experience, it is a step back after Couldn't Stand the Weather. And it's not as good as In Step. It doesn't quite have the songwriting chops that one would present. And, I like Reese, but I think as a whole, 3.5 stars for this one. It's just not quite there. It's close to being a damn fine Stevie Ray Vaughan album, but it's just not quite as interesting and doesn't grip me as much as the other ones.
All right. My number 4 is In Step. See, newly out of rehab, newly sober Stevie Ray Vaughan on this one. Definitely seems to have some renewed energy. I think the songs are mostly good throughout, but I think the production lets it down a tiny bit. Stevie's guitar and voice sound great on it. The keys throughout sound really fake, really corny. The piano on House Is Rockin' just sounds super lame. The organ on Crossfire doesn't sound like a real organ. I don't know what he's playing, but it just sounds just very like sterile and synthetic. I don't know what the deal is. He's way too loud on Let Me Love You, Baby. And the overall sound of the record, I think, is just a little bit thinner than I want it to be. So production-wise, don't love this one. I think it feels a little overproduced as well. I think, you shouldn't really notice the production on a blues record like this. It should kind of just stay out of the way, let the, musicians do the work with their amps and drums and bass and get in a room, let the mics bleed all over the place. Just let it sound natural. And this doesn't really feel that way. All that said, some great songs, some great playing. Tightrope is a Stevie Ray Vaughan classic. Leave That Little Girl Alone has some incredible playing on it. And Riviera Paradise at the end is possibly the highlight of his whole career. Just amazing playing, incredible tone. There's just a mood and an atmosphere on that track that is so amazing. Harkens back to the great sound they had on Couldn't Stand the Weather. So there's a lot of good stuff, and the playing is phenomenal. And the songs are, like I said, mostly pretty good the whole way through. I think it's a pretty enjoyable record, even though the production is, not my ideal preferred Stevie Ray Vaughan sound. But I'm at 3.5 stars for it.
All right, my number 4 is Soul to Soul. Like I said, I've got it at 2.5. Okay, it's just some of the same things that I found wrong with Sky Is Crying. And I definitely think Say What is a really awkward opener. It's like winding down from the get-go. I do not understand like the build wanting that to be the opener. I don't grade it. And like you guys, I think there's great keys and organ work, but I do not like the organ sound like at all. I think it's a bit annoying sounding. Looking at the window with the big horn accompaniment, I'm not really digging. So there's like production choices on here that I am just not really for. I think it's really distracting, to be honest. I've never really been that big on Little Sister. Been kind of sounding the same, and the album just kind of moves a little awkwardly for me. Every song just kind of feels like it happens out of nowhere. The album feels like really rushed or something. I don't know. And then, you got Ain't Gonna Give Up on Love, which is just one of those 100 big, slow, cry the blues ballads. They've got one on every album. It's hard to differentiate. Love the solo on it, though. There's still like, without saying, there's always great guitar work here, which is why these albums are worth checking out. On Gone Home, I do kind of dig the organ, especially when they do the lower end, but still the sound kind of is bothersome. And the guitar works really cool. He's doing some like sick little flutter runs and stuff. Joe's right. Change is awesome. I love that darker kind of sound. I think there's like a meaner emotion to it in the verse that's really cool. And I really like his vocals on You'll Be Mine. This version of Empty Arms is just too weak. Come On Part 3, just not the same as Hendrix for sure. I think, the Hendrix stuff he does is usually pretty spot on, but this one is the one that doesn't really do it for me. It's slower, weaker. The drumming isn't as dirty. And then I do think that A Life Without You is one of the better slow jams and a good closer. So there's some good stuff, nothing atrocious. The album just doesn't really gel for me. So 2.5 for Soul to Soul.
Damn, Cramsey's gonna lose his blues card. People are gonna be upset because he's always nominating blues artists and everything, but they're gonna turn on him after this one, I think. My number 4 is gonna be The Sky's Crying. And is it a real album? Yes, it exists. So it is a real album. Is this what he would have put out in 1991? No, but it's a bunch of really great songs. The tone on, something like Little Wing is just incredible. I mean, Little Wing is just what he does with the Jimi Hendrix sort of sketch and fills it out, and just the things, the riffs and the solos and everything he does is just perfection. It's one of the greatest instrumentals of all time, one of the best covers ever. I think it completely blows away the Hendrix version. Everything else is good too. That song kind of towers above everything, but Sky's Crying, I think his cover is fantastic. There's a lot of instrumentals on here, and probably not enough of Stevie singing, because I think at this point he had a really great voice and really elevated a lot of the songs that he'd been doing, especially on In Step. Sounds fantastic. But it does end with Life by the Drop, which really strips the sound down, shows that he can basically do, it doesn't need to be a screaming electric guitar for him to be a fantastic player. So much feel in just him and an acoustic. Absolutely no accompaniment needed. His voice sounds great, and he kills it on that one. And it's the final album, testament from Stevie, and that sucks because I think he was really just getting going. But I think everything on here is very good, lives up to his legacy, and I have it at 4 stars.
All right, Sky is Crying is my number 3. We got 10 previously unreleased tracks from various periods of his career. There's a lot of good stuff here. Boot Hill was recorded in 89 during the In Step era, and the sound of it smokes the actual album. I think if all of In Step sounded like this track, it would go up a half a star probably, because it just sounds so raw and really cool. The title track is awesome. I'm guessing that was the Soul to Soul era, and I think if that was on Soul to Soul, it would easily be the best track on that album. I'm not sure why it was left off. Like Joe said, his version of Little Wing is spectacular. It is just like his control of his tone and the way he's able to manipulate that with the dynamics of his playing and like the volume control. It's just insanely amazing, jaw-dropping. I agree. It blows away the Hendrix version. I wouldn't say that about any of his other Hendrix covers. I think his Voodoo Child falls a little short of Hendrix, but this one is just unbelievable. Chitlin's Con Carne is awesome. I think it would have been better than the kind of similarly jazzy Gone Home on Soul to Soul. And Life by the Drop, just a lovely kind of bittersweet track at the end to close it out. His voice is in top form. I don't think he gets enough credit as a singer. Everyone's always talking about his guitar playing. I think he's a really, really soulful singer. He's got a great voice. And I think that is maybe one of the things that kind of propels him above a lot of the other kind of blues players of the era, and why he was able to, get so much traction, especially like in a rock, like rock radio and stuff would play him because his voice is so strong. And I think, there's a few maybe slightly more generic kind of bluesy tunes to fill things out, but even those have great playing on them. They show why he was so great. I just think it's a really, really strong compilation. I've got it at 4 stars. I think it's quite good.
All right, my number 3, In Step. Got it at 3 stars. I think it's good. Again, like I love a lot of blues stuff, but album listens are hard for me. Love House is a rockin', great opener, really pleasant getting that taste of the piano right off the bat. And then Crossfire, you're getting that big bass. Like, so it's just really refreshing getting like other instruments to kind of like carry the load a little bit, and like have parts that stand out. I think he sings great on the album. Yeah, I mean, he's such an underrated singer. You know, he's just got such this like big, thick, like boisterous, like voice, and but you know, you feel it when he's singing. Tightrope is great, has that great jangle to it. Let Me Love You, Babe, I think is a little bit less memorable. I think, you know, it's kind of the same case for Leave My Girl Alone, even though some of the playing on it is just absolutely filthy. Like Jason was talking about, like his control, like he plays these messy parts like cleanly. It's hard to describe. Like he's just so in control of his handwork. It's unreal. Travis Walk is pretty cool, full of like that Spitfire, like greaser kind of feel. I really dig the guitar tone. And Wall of Denial is pretty cool. I love when he's playing lower on the neck. I like that. You know, I think a lot of blues guitarists kind of fall into the trap of going high on the neck for like every instinct they have, and he doesn't, and it's really refreshing. Scratch and Snip is pretty cool, and then Riviera Paradise at the end, just absolutely beautiful. You know, a lot of times we complain about longer tracks, but not that one. It's just sensational. I think it's a little bit lame in the middle of this album, but I think it starts and ends really strong. So I'm pretty close to 3.5, but I'm sticking with 3.
All right, my number 3, getting to the top of the line here. It's tough. I went back and forth, but I'm going to go with Couldn't Stand the Weather as my number 3. And, you know, as much as like Texas Flood was just like the Stevie Ray Vaughan show, I think more of Double Trouble comes in on Couldn't Stand the Weather. I think the title track just rules. Tommy Shannon's a really great bass player and really shows it off on that one. I love the weight between the boom 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 boom, like he that extra beat he waits, just I love it. Stevie Ray Vaughan then takes over with just some incredible playing throughout. Absolutely love everything he does on that. The final 2 minutes is just him, just incredible lick after incredible lick, and I love the way, you know, it comes back to like the hook, and he's still, you know, he's just changing his solo up. He keeps it going into the outro and the fade out. Just a marvelous constructed song. I do like the Voodoo Child Slight Return. I think it's not as good as Hendrix. Let's not be crazy about things. But it's great. I mean, his tone's fantastic. He does it different enough that, you know, it's not just like a note for note homage. I think he changes things up enough and does things a little bit differently, gives it his own unique flavor on it. Cold Shots, just a, you know, classic little bluesy vamp. A lot of fun. Tin Pan Alley probably is what holds it back from being second. Just a little too long, and I mean, it's good. It's cool, but it's not quite like what I'm looking for in Stevie Ray. I do think The Things That I Used to Do is really great as well. Some incredible playing on that from Stevie. He does this like washing legato solo at like 2:30, which is just incredible. He does it somewhat on Texas Flood, but when he gets like really going and just the lightning speed that he's doing stuff at is incredible. Just expanding, you know, what the blues could do, what was possible within a blues framework, but he's doing stuff that, you know, I've never heard anyone else do at all. And I think what makes this album so great, I think the production's great, the bass sound is great. Stevie Ray Vaughan's tone is just so rich and warm. The way he gets like from the lows are just perfect. I don't know how he does it, but everything just sounds fantastic, and band sounds great. Kicking Chris Layton, really good drummer as well. Let's not forget him. So yeah, this is a very strong. It's very close to 4.5 stars, but I still have it at 4 stars for Couldn't Stand the Weather.
All right, my number 2 is Texas Flood, recorded in 3 days. Day one was mostly set up, so tracking was basically done in 2 days. It was done in a large like rehearsal space that was owned by Jackson Browne. They were in like a big empty room basically. He played through 2 Fender Vibroverbs and a Dumbleland special head. The head, at least, wasn't even his. It was Jackson Browne's. It just left in the studio, and a tube screamer. So the setup is not anything fancy, and it's an unfamiliar amp, and he still is getting that sound, like really incredible, and just shows how much of his sound was him and not his gear. Just really incredible. And even when like on Life by the Drop on Sky is Crying, an acoustic guitar, it's still unmistakably him. He's such a distinct tone, which is really coming mostly from his hands. You know, and given the circumstances of how quickly it was done, I think it sounds great. Especially, you know, like I said, him using gear that wasn't all his. However, I think compared to some of the other records, especially the next record, I don't think the production on this is quite as good, especially Double Trouble. I think they sound a little bit distant. Like you can tell they're in a big room, maybe just a little too much reverb. They're getting lost a little bit, I think. So not perfect sounding, although the guitar sounds great. Song-wise, though, I think it starts insanely strong with Love Struck Baby and Pride and Joy and Texas Flood. Then you get Tell Me, a Howlin' Wolf cover. You get Buddy Guy's Mary Had a Little Lamb in there, and those are just okay for me. Obviously, again, his playing's great. The songs just kind of lack the flair of some of the originals on this record. Testify is an instrumental Isley Brothers cover. Again, instrumentally very impressive, but feels more like Look What I Can Do kind of thing rather than really soulful playing. Rude Mood, though, is another guitar showcase, instrumental type of song that totally rules. It's really cool, really fast. And even the parts that aren't like him soloing are just jaw-dropping. It's just a really fun kind of romp run through this kind of fast bluesy thing. Dirty Pool is a song written with Doyle Bramhall, which is pretty sweet. He does all this like really fast, loose strumming. He's like, the solo even is chords. It's all chords, and he's going through all these chord changes, just strumming really fast. It's really cool approach to the solo on that track. And then you get Lenny at the end, which is the mellow ballad. He gets that really clean tone, sounds so good. And then when he starts to dig in, that control of the tone that he has, how he's able to go from clean and get the right amount of grit on it when he digs in a little and work the volume knob and work the tone knob. It's just really, really masterful. So I'm at 4 stars on this one. I think it's really strong debut.
I agree. It's my number 2. I've got it at 3.5, which is really good. Pretty much the same as Jason per scales. Love Struck Baby. Yeah, awesome. I actually like the sound of this album, but I usually like things a little bit reverb heavy, a little thinner. And I think this might be the only thing that really hurts this album. I think, not hurts, but I think it's one of his weaker vocal performances. Like, I don't think he's quite comfortable yet, and he'll get there. Pride and Joy is excellent. Texas Flood is just that great heartache blues, down in the dumps, so expressive. No surprise, the guitar is the star of the show here. I really dig Testify. I generally really like when he's doing those fast-paced scraping and muting and really like playing the guitar as, you know, very like rhythmic, percussive kind of instrument. Same with Rude Mood, like Jason was talking about. Mary Had a Little Lamb, I don't really care for, even though some of the guitar work is really cool. Yeah, I think it's 3.5. I think it's really good. I think you could use a few more bangers on it to get it up to 4. But yeah, that's my number 2. I like it a lot.
Do you? Do you really?
Yes.
I don't feel it. I don't feel it in your review. My number 2 is going to be Texas Flood. I think it's a damn fine debut. And just, you know, I didn't know exactly how it was recorded. Thank you, Jason, for pointing that out, and makes it even more impressive. Just the tone, what he can do with the guitar is incredible. I mean, from day one. Love Struck Baby is fantastic. Pride and Joy, you know, there's 3 solos in there that are just incredible. That opening riff is fantastic. Just the bluesy vamp throughout. It's amazing. His cover of Texas Flood's amazing. Everything, guitar wise is perfect, but I agree with Jason, like the rest of the band, it doesn't have that sound that Couldn't Stand the Weather does, where it's like one unit all operating like in sync. I agree with Cramser, his vocals just not even close to what he would become. A little timid, maybe a little unsure of himself. Still pretty good. I mean, for how it was recorded, that's damn fine work. And his vocals are just, one of my favorite parts about him, in conjunction with the guitar, of course. Can't speak enough about the greatness of the guitar, but he had a great voice, and he was just really getting started on In Step. Here, a little unsure of himself, sure. But the tracks are great. Dirty Pool, he's doing this just insane tremolo playing over these big chords, which is awesome. I don't think I've ever heard that anywhere else. Just the speed over like full chords is really cool. And Lenny's a nice closeout. I kind of agree with Cramsey that it could use like one more. It needs like a big, not a pop song, but like a blues song that tilts more towards rock and roll, mainstream a little bit. I mean, it's hard to argue with what he put down in such circumstances. So I have it at 4.5 stars for Texas Flood.
Wow, that was beautiful. I really felt that review. I could tell you were going at least 4.5. That was so moving.
Thank God. I love the blues. I love Stevie Ray Vaughan.
All right. My favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan record. Hopefully you can feel how much I like it with what I'm about to say. This Couldn't Stand the Weather. It was my favorite back when I would listen to him in high school, and it remains so listening back again this week. And like I kind of said in my other reviews, I think Texas Flood is slightly underproduced. Records like In Step, I think, are slightly overproduced, and I think this one nails it. I think it sounds really, really good, really strong, really clean and professionally recorded, but also not overdone. It still sounds raw. It still sounds like a blues rock trio just kind of going at it. And I think you immediately notice the rhythm section a lot more on this record than you do on Texas Flood. The way it's recorded, a lot more in your face, especially the snare. The snare is a lot louder on this record. I think it sounds really great. I think it's about as interesting sounding as you can get from a blues trio. The reverb, I think, is just right on this record. It sounds really good. Gives the guitar a really cool atmosphere, especially on the title track, which you actually have Jimmie Vaughan on that track playing some rhythm guitar. And I think his part really lends to the vibe of the song a lot. Things that I used to do, I think, really shows his vocal ability. Like I said, I think he's a great singer, and that I think is one of his strongest vocal performances. Really bluesy, really soulful, a little bit gruff, a little rough, a lot of conviction. His Voodoo Chow, I think, is great. Debatable, whether it's better than Hendrix. I'm inclined to think not, but I think it's really good. And I think his Hendrix covers kind of show that the best covers are when you stick close to the original, but when you just have like so much of your own thing just in you that it comes out naturally when you're doing a close interpretation, that you just can't help but be yourself. I think that's when covers really work. And I think that's kind of how he approaches the Hendrix covers. He did get some flack from critics and stuff for the number of covers on the record. You've got Voodoo Chow and Cold Shot being a cover. You've got the 9-minute Tin Pan Alley. But I don't know. I think the covers work here pretty well. I think they're all really good, especially Tin Pan Alley. He just crushes it. That clean tone again. I love when he plays with that clean tone. It's like my favorite mode of Stevie. It's just so cool. Then you get Staying Swang, which is, I think, a super cool track, that kind of jazzy swing with Fran Christina on drums, actually not Chris Layton. They bring in the Fabulous Thunderbirds drummer on that one. He's got a really different feel. It's really cool. Then you got the sax on it. It sounds great. Just showing another level of his versatility and his musicianship. So yeah, I think it's a very strong album. I think it's a strong set of songs. I think the covers are good. I think the original tracks are good. The guitar playing on it is incredible. I think it's some of his best playing. The rhythm section is at its best, I think. And the recording is just really good. So all around, really, really strong. 4 stars for Couldn't Stand the Weather.
Yes, my number one. I'm still at 3.5. Very good. I don't think he has a great album, to be honest. Scuttlebutton, pretty hot opener. I love the title track. Joe's right that the start stop with the bass just so cool. And then he does that little slide in, and then just like my favorite, like when he's doing like that guitar riff and Couldn't Stand the Weather is like my favorite style of his playing. When he's doing that like really fast, like percussive, it's almost like he's playing like the hi-hat on his guitar. It's like it's just muting and scraping and slashing and everything. It's so fucking good. I love that tubey bluesy guitar tone, so good. Love the way the drums sound on this album. Like everything's got that big blues kind of feel. Things that I used to do, great track. Love that lonely blues kind of feel. I think his singing is the best on this album. The screeching on that solo is wonderful. Voodoo Child, I love the drums on it and the production. It sounds so smooth and awesome. I don't know if it's better than the Hendrix one. It's just like cleaner and lighter, but still really friggin' good. I really dig Cold Shot. I like his chilly, kind of easy vocals. This is gonna sound weird, but for some reason, this album, the way it sounds, and this must be something from like my memory or history, I just always get this sensation when I'm listening to these songs of like I just need like I just really want to be at a bar with like an ice cold beer, specifically in Pittsburgh. It's like the most Pittsburgh sounding thing I've ever heard, to be in like a somewhat kind of divey, blue collar bar, just drinking beer out of a bottle, and somehow, one of these Stevie Ray Vaughan songs on, and just like making me salivate just thinking about it. Tin Pin Alley, I think, is beautiful, terrific playing. I think it's a great song. I do think it's a bit of a momentum killer for the album. Don't really know where else you could put it. Glad it's part of his catalog. Just is what it is. I think the second half doesn't quite live up to the first half, but it's still pretty good. The only song on here I don't really like is Honeybee. I think it's a little bit lame, a little bit soft, a little bit too chipper. Want more bite. But yeah, Stang Swing, I really like. You getting that sax in there and that jazzier playing. The drums are wonderful. I think other than Honeybee, it's just a really good blues album. So that's where I've got my favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan album, Couldn't Stand the Weather.
Right. Well, that only leaves me, and Instep is my favorite. And I don't know why Instep's. Well, I do know why Instep's my favorite. I just think song-wise, songwriting-wise, it's the best. It doesn't quite have, the thunderbolt and lightning bolt of like, inspiration maybe that his early stuff does with the blues. And it's not quite as, off the wall. He's reining it in a little bit on some of these songs. But I think the songcraft is fantastic. I always thought The House Is Rockin' was like a 50s cover. I think it has a great sound. Big piano, whatever this is called, ostinato at the beginning. I think it's great. I think Crossfire, which was written by Double Trouble, Tommy Shannon, Chris Layton, and Reese, and two other people that I don't really know, is one of his best songs. Just sounds fantastic. There's a great bass groove on it. Got some nice horns popping in, which I think adds a nice, extra addition to the sound. It's not just the blues anymore. These sound like, rock and roll songs, that are played by a great blues player, which I think is what they were going for. A little more mainstream, sure, but I think the songwriting is great. I think Stevie Ray Vaughan sounds the best he ever has vocally. I get what Jason was saying. The production, it's like that 90s sort of like things don't sound as real anymore. But I think the songs themselves are enough to elevate it. Tightrope is a monster. That's like this jet engine wall of noise that comes at you is great. Riviera Paradise is just insane. It's almost like a yacht rock song. Like he's playing like completely different than he ever has before. There's almost no distortion. And he's just like ripping off these blindingly fast runs all over the place. Almost 9 minutes long. It's incredible. And there's, of course, you have the blues covers. You got Let Me Love You Baby from Lee Dixon, Leave My Girl Alone from Buddy Guy, Love Me Darling from Howlin' Wolf. But for the most part, it feels like an original creation from Stevie Ray Vaughan and the boys, and I just like that. I love the blues, I love the Texas flood stuff, but this, just the songcraft and the songwriting, I think is another step forward. The vocals, the guitar playing, still excellent, but reined in a little bit and kind of fits in the template, standard rock template a little bit more. And I think it's great. I think it's 4.5 stars, not a 5-star. No 5 stars for Stevie, but I'd like to think that the next album would have been 5 stars, because he had a lot left, I think, in the tank. And one of those big time tragedies, unfortunately, that seemed to befall every friggin' like great guitarist in the 80s. Like, what the hell is going on? So that sucks. And but I think it's a really good, final legacy for Stevie Ray Vaughan. And yeah, great album, 4.5 stars. In Step, my favorite from Stevie Ray. SRV, baby.
All right, there you go. That's our ranking of the Stevie Ray Vaughan studio albums. I was thinking this week about him, and we had this big discussion on the Discord about how authentic he is, or like, is he like real blues? And listening to him then after having that discussion, I do hear like, it's not, it's not like the original bluesmen. There's a real rock edge to it. I even get like touches of like Joe Satriani type of guitar heroics from his playing. But just the way he brings it all together, the rock, the guitar hero type of stuff. And then also, I think does have a real strong, like actual blues foundation. I just think it works really well. I really enjoyed listening to it this week. Didn't get the 5 stars, but you don't have to get to 5 stars to have a great catalog. So I enjoyed this one.
Well said. Yeah, like he's not a sellout. Like, he's not an ego-driven player. Like, he plays for the song, for the soul, but he's just got mad good technique.
All right, so let us know what you think of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Drop it down in the comments and let us know how you rank the albums. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, hit the bell for notifications. We got a bunch of links in the video description: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, website, merch, Patreon. If you would like to support the channel, we got a lot of cool stuff going on over there. Check it out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.